Hello members and tiny home enthusiasts. Today on Tiny Home Heroes, we are proud to be speaking with Steve Hardy, co-founder of Big Calm Tiny Homesteads. Back in 2019, dismayed by dismal political discourse and anxious about cascading climate change, Steve and Abby set out to find a quiet piece of countryside in the oh-so-green interior of British Columbia, Canada. Described as a glorious 37-acre mountainside bench with spring water and spectacular views, Steve and Abby envision an ecologically sustainable, self-reliant tiny home community guided by the earth care, people care, fair share ethics of permaculture, and strengthened by collaboration, mutual support, and the diverse skills of its members. Are you ready? Let's get started. Like I said, it's really great to finally meet you. You have a unique, not so unique project on the go. It's not so unique in the way that the idea of tiny towns, tiny villages, villages that would be perfectly suited for tiny homes and things like that set apart. But you guys are doing something quite unique and creating a niche within a niche almost, in how much you offer, because of the area that you're living in.
Slocan Valley in the Kootenays.
Yeah, I've got, is that behind you? There it is. That's the Slocan Valley.
Yep, looks like it.
But just such a beautiful area, and it looks like you got a decent amount of space and you've spaced things out so great. So maybe just start off and sort of tell us about how you met really briefly and sort of what got your two brains together. Your experiences are so vast. So what got your two brains together and sort of focused on this back in 2019, 2020?
Yeah, we were, we met, 2016 and got married in 2017. And I had moved back at that point from Montreal, and we met in Calgary. And we were living in a condo in the city, and comfortable day jobs. And I think both of us had an interest in kind of a light interest at the time in terms of living more in the countryside, more a little bit closer to nature.
So was it less a choice of we want to live tiny? It was more a choice as we just want to be close to nature.
It was definitely nature first. And I was quite interested in rammed earth buildings and earthships. And then we were really quite, Abby and I were both really interested in kind of what is an earthship? What does it entail? It's a really interesting system and a full cycle loop. We had also, at that point, we were still talking about, being a little closer to nature. Abby started a permaculture design course with Verge Permaculture, and was really, really interested in that side of things. And then we were looking around just what sort of property. This is 2018 and 2019. We're looking around and like, what are properties like? Where, what areas appeal to us? And so we kind of toured around Alberta and BC, and kept coming back to the area here around Nelson and in particular the Slocan Valley. But we didn't start with tiny. We were definitely looking at interesting and eco-minded builds. Like I said, rammed earth and earthships and modular housing and A-frames and kits. And
how much did you look into these? Was it just research on the internet, research on paper, or did you actually build a few out or anything like that to see?
No, we didn't build any out. We did stay at some Airbnbs that were tiny houses.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would experience it firsthand. And then what really got us into the tiny house space was that we found this property that we eventually purchased here in the Slocan Valley. It's in an unzoned parcel, which is somewhat rare. Most regional districts or municipalities would have zoning restrictions, so they dictate which areas of the city or the region can do what, including guest stays or the types of builds or the size of builds. It ranges. But in many cases across the country, there's been a bias against tiny houses.
Yes.
Especially tiny houses on wheels, and definitely a bias more towards kind of traditional stick buildings.
How did this help push your project along then?
Well, we found this beautiful property. It's on this bench, not too far from the river and lake, in the Slocan Valley, backs onto Crown land. It's beautiful natural space. And it had this really charming very old 1969 kind of homesteader's cabin, like the original log cabin there, but it was in really rough shape. The foundation was it was basically just built on bare earth, and the foundation was starting to give out. The owner at the time was still living in an annex of it, but it wasn't something that we were interested in living in, or would be affordable for us to fix up and salvage. But the property was amazing, and we were talking to the banks and the insurers, and that cabin was kind of a no-go. It was really difficult to insure, and so when we put in the offer, ultimately we couldn't make it happen, and so we then walked away from it. But we were continually attracted to this property, and that got us exploring what are the commercial options that we might be able to get, because that could access commercial insurance options. And that's what led us to tiny houses, is that we recognized that we had this beautiful bench with an open space. We were familiar with tiny houses and the challenges of finding open, spacious places, not just a parking lot or a campground. We knew it was unzoned, and that was a possible perk. And Abby and I were both remote workers, so we were also seeing amongst our peers an interest in working in natural spots remotely. And we started to connect those dots together. And so then we decided, and this is before the pandemic, in late 2019, the property was still on the market, and we decided to put in an option to purchase.
What timing that was.
Yeah. So the option to purchase basically put a hold on it for about half a year. Well, we then fleshed out this crazy idea of, would a tiny homestead community work? Is there interest? Are we the only ones thinking this way? Let's just test it out. We put up a website, and we started to talk to people who seemed interested, and we networked with all of the builders. And lo and behold, we found that there's actually quite a bit of interest. And then, of course, the pandemic happened too, and people were like, I don't want to be working from a city. I don't want to be, or life priorities changed and they want to be closer to nature, or the whole tiny house movement was like, I really like these pro builds. I like what, the eco footprint and the affordability and the design characteristics of it, but I don't want to be in a back alley. I want to have some space. So yeah, we saw that there was a market. We had a property that was just beautiful from a natural perspective, and also commercially, a lot of opportunities there. And then the pandemic also was kind of forcing us to consider where we would live. So we exercised the option and doubled down on the Big Com idea.
So that image behind you, that is a photorealistic, the scenery there, like that mountain is there, that hill is there. That's the actual
that's my
area.
View right out the window here.
Just want to know, how good is your renderer? How good is your graphic designer, right? Is he that good? Really, that looks so amazing. And I'm kind of hard to listen to you talk in a sense, because I'm kind of there. I want to float through the screen and just be there in that area. And the fact that there's a few other people living around me, I've heard some people say, oh, well, I can see my neighbors. I'm like, you know what? You're living in the city. You can smell your neighbors. And in this case, it's, you're in a community with blatantly obviously like-minded individuals. Whether one's an engineer and one's a teacher and one guy just plays video games for TikTok, you're all like-minded in that area. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there.
Yeah, very eclectic skill sets and talents and interests, but a common thread in terms of values and kind of their views on work-life balance. And
I kind of sense that you get a community, just the sense of community over there. No matter who moves in, it's just instant sense of community. I could see people like bringing each other apples and oranges when they move in, and just sort of that sort of, back in the day sort of attitude where it's just so comfy and so serene that it's just a happy day every day for whatever reason it has to be. So let's talk more about this concept of your pocket neighborhood. It's something I think that our community would be really interested in, especially those in our community who are actively looking for somewhere to put down a tiny home or just looking for information about that. The idea of the pocket neighborhood, where it's not just one little neighborhood you've got set aside, you've got to set aside, and you've given them names and you've given them wonderful concepts and ideas about what the area means to it and what's there. It's just so wonderful to go over your website and read about these things. But I would love to hear it from you, from your mind. Like what was, how did your concept for pocket neighborhoods, come about? What's the hashtag work from homestead all about?
Yeah, what was really kind of the intersection of tiny houses, permaculture, and remote work. Those are big trends, and we don't really see those changing in any significant way. Apologies, my cat is yelling.
Oh, that's fine. I love cats.
Yeah, so it was the intersection of those things which come together really quite nicely. And yeah, the pocket neighborhood, I think his name is Ross Chapin. So not our concept. That's something that's been out there before and is used in urban design, and is that nice balance of having space and neighbors without being crowded together. So there is the community aspect, which is very valuable in a rural and remote setting like ours, where we don't want to be isolated. We could very well be isolated, and there's a lot of work and activities that we can do, which are just nicer to do together as a community. And there's a lot of interest in doing those things together as a community, and then having your own space. And also with tiny houses, the benefit too is that you're in a small space, which is nice and efficient for your own living, but also to have space outside with others basically expands your living room.
Entirely. I can see there being communal fire pits, in the center of these neighborhoods, where quite often, you see everybody outside enjoying the area with all of your neighbors. Or if one neighbor gets in trouble, like, it's easy enough for all the other neighbors to kind of band together. So it's living a life that's, in the isolated part of life that we love, but not the part that we don't love.
Absolutely.
We don't like to be lonely, but we want to be in that sort of that area that that most people might consider isolation, but you're not isolated.
Yeah.
You're isolated from the things that you don't love. And that's the city and the bustle and all the constant noise. And
one of the principles of permaculture is to observe and to kind of, listen and observe the land and where water goes and where things kind of belong or where they grow and don't grow. And in this particular property, there was this already open bench. So kind of a flat area. It's what you're looking at behind me right now. That is in this horseshoe shape, and you've got plenty of space within it, but also the buildings are they kind of they wrap around, and you've got this kind of communal aspect as well as your private aspect as well, and those balance really well just with the landscape that we've got here.
I really kind of want to be there.
Come visit.
I'll tell you one thing though, and just to kind of get a little bit off topic, I lived in BC for a few times, once for quite a long time, up at Bear Mountain on the island. And I loved it. I love nature and I love being out. I love camping. I'm quite an outdoorsy fella, but at the same time, I missed the horizon. I found that when I didn't realize it until I came back to Alberta, and we came over on the plane and we landed, and I looked out and I could see for hundreds of miles, not just tens of miles. And for some reason it hit me in the chest. I'm like, oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I'm in the mountains, I can see the mountains, but when I'm outside of the mountains, I can still see the mountains and I can see everything else. It's just wonderful like that. So, you're so remote, but at the same time, and you're in the middle of the mountains, but you're not, it doesn't look claustrophobic in any way whatsoever. It looks so open, and yet you're in your own area of the world.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing around people who love the coast and the ocean. That same thing is like seeing the horizon, and I would have a difficult time, I think, in the taller Rockies, where it's a little colder and colder in the sense of kind of closed in, because they're much bigger and imposing. Whereas here in the Kootenays, they're kind of gentle, sloping, treed mountains where you can still see the sky. And
they're very eroded. Yeah, that's a great picture you took of that, because it shows that aspect. So Of the 10 neighborhoods that you guys have on your website, which one do you have a favorite? Do you have one that just like that you just love so much?
Well, I can tell you that there's been a couple that are particularly popular. So kind of the ones tucked in by the trees, those ones tend to be popular. But we've had quite a mix of interests. Some folks, they have kids and they're looking for a little bit more space around their pad. So some of the ones at the kind of on the north side that are just larger and more open, they fit for that use. And then there's one woman who just really likes the moon and wants to be able to see the moon at night. So having that east facing view on our west side of the pocket neighborhood was of particular importance to her. For others, they want the shade. So that's kind of on the knob hill, which is kind of this shot here.
Yeah. Okay.
Which looks north.
Mm-hmm.
And others, they are looking to do things with solar, and so they want to be more in the sun. So it really depends, and there's kind of something for everyone within this small space.
So what is the versatility for people that do have a, like, you know, for the people that maybe they do have a home or they're building their tiny home and they're looking that this would be a great place for me to go? What kind of versatility do you offer for what kind of homes can be there? How big are there any size limits? Are there any weight limits?
Yeah, we generally focused on tiny houses on wheels.
Okay.
And
is it a requirement though?
It's a somewhat solid requirement. It's something that we might be flexible on depending on, because there's so many sort of flavors and nuances. But it's not an RV park, and it's not suited necessarily for Airstreams, at least for the full-time year-round stuff, or for schoolies, or and certainly the foundation, small buildings, even on foundation, those would be a whole different kind of set of considerations for us around the build. So we've been focused really on tiny houses on wheels, in particular ones that are pro-built, just because the quality of Canadian pro-built tiny houses right now is just so great, and the demand that they have for spaces like this is quite high. And that just kind of fits. It simplifies it to have something where you can tow in, tow out. It fits with the rental model, and the quality is there. The standard is there through those pro builders. So that's been our focus.
So do you offer people to be like, so if I want to say, if I'm telling you straight up right now, okay, I want that lot over here on this hill, are you willing to take me through the entire process to get my tiny home built? Say, I don't have a builder, I don't know anything about insurance, kind of an idiot. I just want my tiny home and I want it right there and I want it now. How much of that process can you take me through? And is there stuff that I would actually need to go and prepare first and understand before I actually went and got to that point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our process has been, as I mentioned, we kind of started testing the concept in 2020 and have kind of continually built out our park rules and FAQs and kind of grown into a rental model that has an equity component as well, which we're in the middle of right now. So really trying to figure out what works best as a kind of whole system. Our process has been maybe slower because of that, intentionally so that somebody can decide, do they want to live rural, or do we have internet at the level that they require for their job? Are they comfortable with this particular valley? So we encourage people to, our first step is basically, we call it the Tiny Homesteader Questionnaire, which is basically running through, at what stage are you at? Do you have a build already? Is it in the works? Are you looking at, fall of this year or summer of next year, that sort of thing. And then along that way, we then will have a call like this with folks for them to meet us and for us to meet them, and to get a sense of, a fit and answer all those questions that they probably have. From there, then there's we encourage people to come visit, more so at this time of year than in the winter,
of course.
Yeah, and we've now got we call it the Pocket Getaway, which is an Airbnb guest stay tiny house, a 0 squared jaunt model that we're managing. So there is a place to stay, a tiny house space to stay on site.
You just have the one unit?
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
first one. It came in the fall, and it's been actively booked now this spring.
What does it cost to book that?
It's ranging from I think about 100 to 120 a night.
Why does it range?
Just season, so early April versus midsummer.
The $20 range isn't really anything to sneeze at. That's so $100, $120 a night.
Yeah.
And that's full service, like all services, everything you need. You just bring your own food, etc.
Yeah, it's a beautiful new build. It was the first, it's called a Jaunt by Zero Squared. It was the first off the line of that particular model. It's got a microwave range, fridge, full shower, loft. It's really a very, very nice modern building. And the gentleman who owns it, that we've partnered with on this, he's really gone out of his way to set up all of the spices and coffee and cutlery and cooking materials. So it's a really nice place to kind of stay. It's tucked kind of back in the woods by the cedar glen that we've got.
Is it part of one of the other neighborhoods, or is it kind of set by itself?
Right now it's over, yeah, kind of on its own. It's closer to the old homesteader cabin.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, while the community itself over in the meadow is still under construction.
By the way, everybody, if you really want to know about this stuff, even just to kind of get information, go to the website and fill out the questionnaire. It'll teach you a few things questions that you may not have thought to ask as well. I know it did to me. So the BigCom website is amazing. It's wonderful. They have lots of great content on there, lots of stuff to say. So yeah, go over there, everybody, and fill out the questionnaire and get this, fill Steve's email with lots of stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, there are a lot of considerations that are kind of under the radar that I'm sure members appreciate. But is it a flash or compost toilet, or is it a 30 amp or 50 amp service? Is this something that you want north facing or south facing because of solar extensions down the road? What are you looking for in a community? So what skills can you bring to the community, or that you're eager to participate on?
It's really neat that you're doing that. You're kind of organizing the community to sort of accept people without being sort of just blatant about you can't live here because you don't have the right skill set, but you've kind of organized it to sort of just be the most inviting to those sorts of people. And what's really interesting to me, and you have a lot of really great partners on these projects. And I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk and everything that his companies do. Maybe not him so much, but everything his companies do are awesome, including Starlink. And you've partnered with Starlink. So out here, you're going to have full, reliable internet services, high speed. What brought that about? Like, what a wonderful idea.
Yeah, we were lucky to get in on their Better Than Ever program. So it was their initial launch. So one of the first units, I think, in Canada. So we were able to test out, is this for real? Are the speeds good? Is the consistency good? And it generally has. I'm on that right now. So it's a very high speed, consistent link.
So will every house have a satellite? Will have a dish, or is this sort of a community? So how do you organize that for people who are going to be living there?
Yeah, we're working with a couple network engineers. So we'll have probably a couple Starlink dishes, as well as some other services, kind of traditional players in the area that are line of sight wireless, or there is a fiber optic broadband project that's coming online in the next year or so in the valley. So the last mile aspect of that isn't determined yet, but we hope to tie into that, and then have redundancy, so that if Elon's satellites fall out of the sky, or if there is a bad storm or whatever, that there is still kind of redundant connections for us to work with.
That's awesome. I love the concept you guys have out there. The area you guys chose was just top notch. The idea of the neighborhood is awesome because it just gives you a little bit more choice. And I think the tiny home community specifically really needs more options, more people-friendly options to take. It's easy to build a tiny home. You can get a tiny home built, no problem, lickety split. But where am I going to put it? How am I going to insure it? Is the area I'm in going to be friendly towards it? We're still fighting NIMBYism.
Yeah.
And you seem to have solved all of these problems in kind of one fell swoop. And that's what I meant at the beginning when I said you've made a solution that's kind of a common solution at the moment. It's over the last 2 years, but your solution to that is really unique in that you're engineering it to have a certain feel and to do certain things. And I think that's just wonderful. So I wanted to kind of end this interview then by just asking you what would be some major advice you had for anybody who wanted to do this sort of thing. You wanted to make the switch. I live in the big city and I want to make the switch to a tiny home, but it sounds exciting to me, but I'm not really sure, what's involved. So what would be your biggest part of advice to the layman, so to speak?
Yeah, I'd say the old adage, try before you buy. That A, living tiny, and B, living rural, those are both big decisions. And add to that now working remote, whatever your job is, if it's more physical and in the region, or if it's more virtual and can do from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Those three things are really important. So we encourage people that, before you go too far with us in terms of reserving a pad, that you're comfortable in a tiny house. So you've talked to the builders, or you've seen some show units, or done the Airbnb experience a couple of times to just make sure that that's a comfortable thing. It's a big decision. And then likewise with rural, it's that, and most of the people we've talked to, they're already comfortable with this part, but it is important to, just to assess that is the switch you want to make from the city, because there are things that are positives, the fresh air, fresh water, open space, but some negatives too. It's a little bit further to the grocery store and the clinic and all of those things. So to make sure that those trade-offs match with your desired lifestyle, and those are things that you can do before you put down the down payment, or before you make a big life change, that you can try those out first.
After you get really excited, stop, sit on your couch, take a deep breath, mm-hmm. think about what you're about to do, and understand that, sure, it might be fun to live tiny for a month, but if you're considering doing it for ultimately the rest of your life, a year, 2 years, 3 years, well, how are you going to feel being in that small home 5 years from now? Is it going to still be comfortable, or is it going to be just packed with stuff because you can't stop collecting stuff? Is it going to be like that? So I think that's pretty common advice that I get from a lot of people. And it's probably the best advice you can give is just, okay, it's great to get excited about it, but stop and think about the long-term implications of what you're actually going to do.
I think too, if you're more at the build stage, then good advice there is that you think kind of beyond just the designer aspects that you see on YouTube and kind of the popular shows, that you look at some of the practical pieces that you can add onto a tiny house or build into it that would fit for a countryside location, or that can help with energy sustainability or reduce your eco footprint. So it's more than just the aesthetics or kind of like cute cubby holes and so on, but it's also like there's a lot of really interesting innovations you can build into a house at that stage that fit
absolutely
in an environment like this.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to end it there. I can think of a million more questions to ask you, so we might have to get you along for another interview after you guys have progressed a little bit more. But I want to thank you for your time today. Thanks for answering all those questions and just being so open about what you guys are doing over there. And I wish you guys all the luck in the world. We're definitely going to be following you guys to see how things are going. And you never know, I might be able to make my way out there and shake your hand and go and take a walk around your area.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Frank. Yeah, it's been great to chat.
So we'll get together another time soon. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you another time.
Sounds good.